a player once destined to have his number retired by the most storied franchise in baseball. A superstar following in the footsteps of David Ortiz. That's how special Rafael Devers was. The power, the swagger, the moments. Boston believed they had their next legend. But instead of building a legacy, everything started falling apart. The pressure grew heavier, the relationship with the Red Sox became toxic, and the superstar Boston, once viewed as untouchable, suddenly became expendable. Now he's in San Francisco, and for the second time in just a few years, Rafael Devers might already be on the move again. This is the downfall of Rafael Devers. While Boston watched its stars walk away for nothing, Mookie Betts to the Dodgers, Andrew Benintendi to Chicago, and Xander Bogaerts to San Diego, one thing became crystal clear after the 2022 season. The Red Sox could not let Rafael Devers leave too. Not again. Not after losing franchise stars year after year. Not after the fan base completely lost trust in ownership. And definitely not after Devers had already proven he could become the next face of baseball in Boston. So on January 4th, 2023, the Red Sox gave fans what they had been begging for. They made Rafael Devers a Red Sox for life. An 11-year, $331 million extension. One of the biggest contracts in franchise history. A clear sign that Boston believed Devers was destined to become one of the greatest Red Sox players ever. At least, that's what Boston thought. In the first 2 years after the extension, Rafael Devers was still producing like a star. In 2023, he played 153 games, hit 33 home runs, drove in 100 runs, and posted a .271 average with an .851 OPS. Then in 2024, even while dealing with injuries, he still hit .272 with 28 home runs, 83 RBIs, and an even better .870 OPS. So on paper, Rafael Devers was not falling apart. The bat was still dangerous, the power was still real. But the Red Sox still weren't winning enough, the defense was still a concern, and the expectations after a $331 million extension were completely different. Boston didn't just pay him to be productive, they paid him to be the guy. The player who could carry them out of the post-Mookie era, and once you get superstar money in Boston, being good is no longer good enough. But the first real sign of trouble came in 2024. The numbers were still there, but something around Rafael Devers started to feel different. And in September, with the Red Sox season hanging by a thread, that tension finally started to show. Boston had just been swept by the Mets. The playoff race was slipping away. The pressure was growing. And in the middle of one of the most important stretches of the season, Devers refused to speak to the media. The silence itself wasn't new. Raffy had never been the guy who loved the cameras, and Boston already knew that. But in 2024, the context around that silence changed. The Red Sox were fading, the pressure was building, and every little thing around their franchise player started getting judged differently. So what used to feel like a quiet superstar just being himself started to feel like something bigger. Not because Devers suddenly changed, but because the expectations around him did. Boston wasn't just asking him to hit anymore. They were asking him to carry the weight of the franchise, and for the first time, people started wondering if that was a role he ever really wanted. After 2024, the questions around Rafael Devers were already starting to grow. But in 2025, everything exploded. On February 13th, the Red Sox finally made the big move fans had been waiting for. They signed Alex Bregman to a 3-year, $120 million deal. Immediately, the message felt obvious. Boston was trying to win again. On paper, it made sense. Bregman was a proven winner. But there was one problem. Rafael Devers was already at third base. According to reports out of Boston, the Red Sox had told Devers that if Bregman came to Boston, Bregman would play second base, meaning Devers would stay at third. That was supposed to be the plan. Then spring training arrived, and suddenly everything changed. Bregman started taking reps at third base, the Red Sox shifted their plan, and Devers, the same player they had just paid to be the face of the franchise, was now being pushed to designated hitter. And once the season started, things only got worse. Devers came out ice cold, starting the year 0 for 19 with 12 strikeouts in his first 4 games. And in Boston, a start like that doesn't just become a slump, it becomes a crisis. Fans were frustrated, the media was loud, and suddenly, the same player Boston had once treated as untouchable was being questioned every single day. Then came the moment that broke everything. Tristan Casas went down with a season-ending injury, leaving the Red Sox with a hole at first base. And instead of going outside the organization or finding a cleaner solution, they went back to Devers. The same guy they had already moved off third, the same guy they told to focus on being the DH. Now they wanted him to learn first base too, and that's when Rafi pushed back again. He said he didn't understand the decisions being made by the front office. He made it clear he didn't want to be treated like an in-between player. From that point on, the situation was no longer just uncomfortable. It was broken. It got so bad that John Henry flew to Kansas City to meet with him in person. And when the owner has to fly across the country to repair the relationship with your franchise player, that tells you everything. By then, the trust was gone, the role was unclear, and the player who was once supposed to become a Red Sox legend suddenly felt like someone Boston no longer knew how to handle. During all of this, Rafi was having the second-best offensive month of his entire career by OPS, maybe the most important month of his career, because it came while his relationship with Boston was completely falling apart. In May of 2025, he hit .356 with a .468 on-base percentage, a .607 slugging percentage, a 1.074 OPS, 7 home runs, and 33 RBI. So this wasn't a player who stopped producing. This was a player still hitting like a superstar, while the organization around him was turning into chaos. And that's what made the situation so messy. The Red Sox didn't trade Devers because he couldn't hit anymore. They traded him while he was proving he could still be exactly what they paid for. The problem wasn't the bat. The problem was the relationship. On June 15th, the era was over. Just like that, Rafael Devers was no longer a Boston Red Sox. The player who was supposed to spend his entire career in Fenway Park was gone. The player who was supposed to follow David Ortiz, carry the franchise, and become one of the greatest hitters in Red Sox history, had been shipped across the country to San Francisco. And it didn't feel like a normal trade. It felt like the end of something that was never supposed to end. After everything that happened in Boston, San Francisco was supposed to be different. For the first time in years, Rafael Devers wasn't being asked to carry an entire franchise on his back. He was joining a lineup that already had pieces built to last. Matt Chapman was locked in for years. Willie Adams was locked in for years. The Giants weren't bringing Devers in to save them by himself. They were adding him to a core. And that mattered. Because in Boston, Devers became the guy. The face. The player who was supposed to replace Mookie Betts, follow David Ortiz, carry the offense, lead the clubhouse, and justify one of the biggest contracts in franchise history all at once. In San Francisco, he didn't have to be all of that, he just had to hit. But San Francisco wasn't some desperate team throwing a Hail Mary. When the Giants traded for Devers, they were 40-31 in the playoff race with momentum, and they looked like one big bat away from becoming a real problem in the National League. This was supposed to be the boost that pushed the Giants over the top. Instead, Rafi's Giants career started ugly. In his first 15 games with San Francisco, Devers hit just .203 with 25 strikeouts. And for a player trying to prove Boston made a mistake, that first impression mattered. But eventually, Devers did settle in. He finished 2025 with 35 total homers, 15 with Boston and 20 with San Francisco. With the Giants, he played 90 games and hit .236 with a .347 OBP, a .460 slugging percentage, a .807 OPS, 20 home runs, 51 RBI, 56 walks, and 116 strikeouts. So no, Devers wasn't washed. The power was still real. Because while Rafi eventually found his swing, San Francisco's season went the wrong direction. They slowly slipped out of the playoff race. And on the other side, Boston did the one thing that made the optics even worse. They won. After trading away their franchise cornerstone, the Red Sox didn't collapse. They found a new identity. And by the end of the season, Boston was back in the playoffs. So the story became brutal. Boston moved on and made October. San Francisco added Devers and missed. And for Rafi, that meant something even darker. For the fourth straight year, he was watching the postseason from home. By 2026, the excuses were gone. No more mid-season trade chaos. No more adjusting to a new city. No more, he just got here. This was supposed to be the full reset. A full off-season with San Francisco. A full year in the Giants lineup. And a full chance for Rafael Devers to prove that Boston gave up too soon. But instead, 2026 started with the same uncomfortable feeling. Rafi came out slow again. In April, Devers hit just .196 with only 2 home runs, 11 RBIs, and 7 runs scored across 26 games. And for a player already carrying the weight of the contract, the trade, and another missed playoff run, that wasn't just a bad month. It felt like evidence. Evidence that maybe Boston moved on at the right time. Evidence that maybe San Francisco didn't get the superstar version of Devers. The weird part was that his bat speed hadn't completely disappeared, but it was trending the wrong way. Since 2023, it had dropped every single year, from 73.4 miles per hour to 72.5 to 71.6, all the way down to 71.3 in 2026. So this wasn't a player who suddenly couldn't swing anymore, but the trend was real. And everything after contact looked even worse. His average exit velocity dropped from 93.5 to 89.9 miles per hour. His hard hit rate fell from 56.1% to 45.1%, and his barrel rate was basically cut in half. For a hitter like Rafael Devers, that mattered because his entire value had always been built on violence. The bat speed, the exit velocity, the ability to destroy mistakes with one swing, and even the spray chart told part of the story. Devers wasn't suddenly the worst opposite field hitter in baseball, but he was using the opposite field less. His oppo rate had slipped to around 22% in 2026, down from the mid-20s in his best years. And for Devers, that mattered more than it would for most hitters, because his swing was built perfectly for Fenway Park. When Rafi was at his best in Boston, he didn't have to sell out for pull-side power. He could let the ball travel, drive it the other way, and still get rewarded by the green monster. A hard line drive to left field could turn into a double. But now, he wasn't in Boston anymore. He was in San Francisco. And Oracle Park does not give hitters the same gifts. Suddenly, the same swing that once looked tailor-made for Fenway didn't feel quite as dangerous. The opposite field contact was down. The hard contact was down. The barrel rate was down. Rafi's swing didn't completely disappear. His world changed. And once that happened, every cold stretch became harder to ignore. But to be fair, Devers did start showing signs of life. Over his last 15 games, he was slashing .304 with a .350 OBP, a .607 slugging percentage, 4 homers, 6 RBIs, 4 walks, and 18 strikeouts. So this wasn't some clean straight-line collapse. San Francisco is 20-29 at the time of recording, and that changes everything. Because when the Giants traded for Rafi, they weren't supposed to be here. They were supposed to be a team on the rise, one superstar bat away from making noise in the National League. That was the whole point of the trade. Devers was supposed to be the boost. But less than a year later, San Francisco is under .500, The season already feels uncomfortable, and reports are connecting his name to the idea of moving big contracts. Not just role players, big names, Matt Chapman, Willie Adams, Young-Hoo Lee, and Rafael Devers. Now, to be clear, that doesn't mean a trade is guaranteed. Other reports pushed back and said the Giants have not seriously discussed breaking up that core. But the fact that Devers' name is even being mentioned again tells you how far this story has fallen. This is a player who was once supposed to be untouchable, Boston's future, Fenway's next icon, a future retired number. Now, for the second time in less than a year, Rafael Devers is being talked about like a contract a team might want to escape. That is the full circle nightmare. Boston once looked at Rafael Devers as untouchable. San Francisco once looked at Rafael Devers as the answer. Now, before he's even had a full normal season there, his name is already being mentioned again. Then it's no longer just a Boston problem, it becomes a Rafael Devers problem. In the span of 1 year, Rafael Devers went from the heart and soul of the most storied franchise in baseball, with a clear path toward Cooperstown, to an average-looking player across the country in a much worse situation. That's what makes this downfall so hard to believe. It didn't happen slowly, it happened fast. He didn't lose his talent overnight. He lost the story people believed about him.